Good afternoon. My name is Susan Doyle and I'll be your facilitator today on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. I'd like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 34th webinar, the topic of which is Leadership for Lean Project Delivery by Kevin McHugh from Mace Group. If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will consolidate and ask Kevin in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The speaker for today is Kevin McHugh from Mace Group. Kevin brings experience from a uniquely diverse series of roles he has undertaken during his career to date, from senior project engineer, project manager, construction manager, and construction supervisor to planner and project manager. Kevin has developed an in-depth understanding of what it takes to deliver lean construction, understand the requirements, and apply lean techniques to underpin his construction management experience at each stage of a project. Kevin was responsible for developing the production control system using the last planner system, working with the supply chain and the Mace management team to produce an effective system that communicated site activities throughout the project. He also managed the digital process to integrate the production control process with the project management KPIs using visual management and identifying high-risk activities, off-site and on-site production activities to monitor progress. Kevin is involved in deploying an integrated project delivery model on large-scale projects. He recognises the need for close collaboration and strong stakeholder involvement in the project delivery. He is focused on providing a lean project delivery system that identifies opportunities for continuous improvement. I will now pass you over to Kevin to start his presentation.
Hi, thanks Susan. Good afternoon everybody. The title for the presentation today is Leadership for Lean Project Delivery. So I'm going to use some information that I have used from my master's dissertation and work that I'm doing with my PhD, as well as practical examples to show how leadership and ownership are key components for successfully deploying a lean management system. Okay, so the problem with construction, if you like, is an awful lot of waste are embedded. So typically, non-productive time is 58% in typical construction projects. These are familiar wastes. 25% is made up of waiting on information, work, materials, and tools. Another 25% is made up of unnecessary movement and unnecessary material handling. And 8% is made up of rework. These are familiar reasons for unproductive time on construction. So, you know, why does it go wrong, or where does it go wrong? Is it undefined goals, scope changes, inadequately skilled personnel, lack of accountability and proper risk management, poor communication? These are all lessons learned from typical construction reviews of how we're managing productivity in the workplace. So over the last 20 years, there hasn't been a huge increase in productivity. The latest McKinsey report showed a 1% productivity per hour in the construction industry. So this pie chart is taken from 2015, and productivity still has not improved in that time. And the comparison down here is, sorry, that gets off my screen, is the manufacturing waste as a benchmark, where productivity is at 74%, where the waste is at 26%, and construction productivity is at 58%. Non-productive time, sorry, is 58%, and production time is only 42%. So lean construction has been proposed as a solution. So, you know, with lean construction, what is it? How do you feel in a lean delivery system? You know, so first of all, working collaboratively to manage the project. This involves all stakeholders, breaks down silos, gets client information, design team information, construction management information, supply chain management, special equipment providers, and vendors all working together to integrate into a management system. And this provides safety, greater safety through an integration, improve transparency and improve communication between teams, improve safety on the project. This also leads to greater coordination, improves task execution, with work being done at the right time. So fewer execution problems, the right work done at the right time to the right quality. And this greater communication improves schedule and cost reliability. So for executing tasks, the right tasks at the right time, we're able to get predictability on our schedules and costs. And the quality focus is that the conditions of satisfaction are identified between all stakeholders. So we understand what good looks like when we're working collectively to deliver a quality solution. And also it gives teams greater responsibility. We're asking, as a collaborative management tool, everybody to get involved, everyone to show leadership and own their plan. So leadership and ownership is the accountability that is required to provide a lean delivery system. The tools are in place, but it's how the engagement of all parties in the tools will develop a lean delivery system. And this will provide increased value for the customer. So, just going to ask a question on that. If you could just think about that for example, how would you define value for a customer? If you could just think for a second and maybe just type in the question box that Susan will be able to take. So obviously we don't know to see who's typing the questions, so just to get a flavour of what people think this means. What is the increased value for a customer? We've identified the wastes or potential waste that we've seen in construction, but where is the value? Where do we see the value? So I don't know if we take 20 or 30 seconds maybe to get some suggestions.
Yeah, we have a few in already. Kevin, quicker turnaround, lower embedded carbon, lower cost, early delivery, on time, on budget, and no business disruption. Delivering on time, no surprises along the way, lower cost, value is additional features, reduced complexity, cheaper end product.
Okay, so look, there's a lot of definitions there, all valid, but all different to the same degree. So what we can determine where value is, and this is probably an important statement, like value can only ever be determined by the customer. Anything that adds cost but not value is waste. So we won't go through the 8 wastes and describe them, but if you're familiar with the first slide, we have rework and goods and services that fail to meet users' needs. So 1 in 8 is the 8%. We have waiting time, number 5, that's 25%. You know, we have unnecessary production, over processing, unnecessary motion, that's another 25%. So identifying waste of value, as we see here, is customer focused. So anything that adds waste and not value is not value added work. So in terms of customers, you know, there's a number of customers in the life cycle of a project. So handoffs and identifying what conditions of satisfaction are from one trade to another. So there's customers in the building process. So an M&E fit out or any fit out would need an envelope that is dry and conditions are fine, you know, for people to work. So there's handoffs and trade-offs that will provide value throughout the life cycle of the project. So that's another key thing to understand where the value is through the process. You know, we don't necessarily need to look at the end product, where some of the descriptions were where you can say you provided value to the customer, you provided lower cost, more predictable. You know, that will only happen through the life cycle of the project. And we mentioned in the introduction that the last planner system was one of it's the main production system that we would use on site. We apply it to production and design facility practices, but identifying waste and constantly identifying waste through the system and removing waste adds value to the end product, and in the involvement of all the stakeholders. So you have your client, design team, main contractor, supply chain, specialist contractors. So they're identifying where the value is, and through that you can build a picture of the whole product, and everybody understands what the customer needs. So again, it's an important thing to focus on value throughout and identify values and waste through every stage of the system. And this is one way of doing it. We're talking about big room environments. So this is where you talk about potentially 4 tasks for projects to succeed. You need leadership, you need coordination, you need decisions to perform the work that adds value, and everybody has involvement in this: clients, stakeholders, contractors, subcontractors, decisions on products, scope, time, you name it. We're familiar with this, but this kind of decisions and open and transparent discussions allows us to develop realistic and predictable plans and identify risks and opportunity. So it's people orientated. So it's people, are going to provide the leadership, and it's people that are going to own the plans as they're progressed through a project. So one of the key things is to get a process in place. So a learning environment is key to lean practices. The PDCA circle there, the Deming circle, the plan, do, check, act, it's inherent through the whole system. And a lean delivery model is an agile delivery system. It reacts to current site conditions. You're creating a learning environment. You're showing what's went well, what didn't go well, and what needs to be improved. You're giving people an opportunity to show what hasn't gone well and review it. So, you're creating a safe environment. So, planning includes defining criteria for success. So identifying what is success, what it looks like, and developing strategies to achieve them. And the control part describes the process of causing events to conform to the plan and triggering opportunities for learning and replanning as required. So that's what we're talking about, being agile. You're reacting to current conditions. Every project is unique, and they usually have to build in unique situations. Even if it's the same base design, if you're working in different jurisdictions, there's unique constraints to these plans. So creating this environment where we look at what we planned, measure, and this is where a bit of the accountability goes through. You need to be able to describe what you're doing for the work and make people accountable for it. So you measure your PPC, you look at your summaries, you look at the areas of improvement, what worked well and what didn't work well. So that's in terms of production and giving people ownership of their plans and, reviewing their plans. So everybody's getting involved in it. We also need to have a standard system for displaying project information in a transparent way. So we use a control room, a big room environment. So the digital control room provides a collaborative area where all information on the project is stored and displayed, and it's accessible to all stakeholders. So this is a single source of truth. This is where program, issues, direction from client is all available. So this transparency develops trust between the parties, and it's another way of breaking down silos. So if we're working collaboratively together, we're identifying our risks and opportunity and trying to understand as a project how we can achieve and get success that we've decided. So it's important to show that transparency, because that does build the trust. And again, if you're talking about taking ownership, is to show the leadership to trust in the system, and again take ownership of your plans and your responsibilities. So just to give a little example of where it kind of started out, this was taken from my master's study. We did a case study just on introducing the last planner system. So there was a lean operating system in place. It wasn't using the full last planner system in terms of how the reviews were carried out. So a more stricter PPC regime was put in, just simple as that. And this particular example will show a 15-week period showing how the people's attitudes changed as well, you know, and how people interacted with the system simply by providing data for them to review their plans. So they're getting information back, feedback, to see what went well and what didn't go well. And it's a kind of example to see, you know, where do you start off? What can you expect to see when you start off? You know, you're trying to get greater engagement from your people. You're trying to get people to, as I say again, own their plans. So this ownership and leadership within the group will come to the fore. So you can see here when it started out, between 40 and 50% was the typical PPC. So that would be typical of all typical construction projects. We looked at the waste there earlier on, that, you know, 42% is about the productive time typically on construction, and that there's no data since then to show that anything's any different. So we're looking at, again, lean construction as a possible solution to this. So we looked at our weekly work plans. We started developing and using PPC as our guide. So what you can see there is the PPC is steadily rising. The feedback loop has been beginning to be engaged. We're understanding what's working well, what isn't working well, and we've got a PPC between 71 and 77%. So this would be typical for the last planner system in shielding production. So we're looking ahead and managing short-term plans and shielding and making sure the works for the requisite next weeks are ready. So that's the idea of using the PPC to improve your project plans. Another thing we noticed then is that there was an increase in commitments. So the quality of the weekly work plans improved, where before, between the contractors, we'd just get over 80 tasks per week. As we started getting more involved in developing these plans and identifying what works and doesn't work, we've seen a reaction. You know, we've got over 180 average tasks from week 2 to 14. It's a huge increase with the same people, but again, there's a bit more transparency, a bit more understanding about what we are trying to achieve. So if you like, the conditions of satisfactions are more involved, so people can get engaged more in the plan. We know that everybody's reviewing the plans, we're talking about the plans, we're improving the plans, and that's evident here by an 118% increase in the volume or the detail of the tasks that were committed. And of course, if the PPC is improving from 40% to an average of safety 77%, that is an exponential task completed increase. So, you know, there's a huge amount of tasks being increased from where we were prior to introducing the PPC. So giving people a chance to analyze and review data has given people a chance to own and improve their plans. And this has also led to greater transparency, a greater number of tasks being identified, and a more integrated system. And again, a more successful system. So we were able to identify more tasks and complete more tasks. So that's what this is trying to show here, that it's not only did we get an average of 77% over this 15-week period. Again, we're looking at a small snapshot in time, but we've got an enormous level of detail in that same period, which allows teams again to improve exponentially. So this is like what if we put it into challenging production. We know we can do better if we put more effort or time into it, and that we do get the plans and review them and give feedback. So the PDCA function does work. You know, the plan, do, check, act is a key part to developing a lean culture on site. And, you know, the fact that you are checking and acting on your results is creating a learning environment. So, you know, you're trying to create an environment where you can challenge yourselves, challenge your own plans, not lay blame at the door or, you know, point fingers. It really is a collaborative effort in order for this to work. You can't use it both ways. You know, you're trying to get people in to develop, feel safe to highlight what their risks are, highlight what their problems are, and improve their PPC. So a point there that is, high labour productivity goes hand in hand with shorter and more reliable schedules. So if we're getting more tasks executed correctly, our short-term plans are more reliable, more predictable, and we're able to improve our planning. The fact that we are getting what we are planning to do done shows that we can forecast and line up preceding tasks with more predictability. So it's important that that step is taken to improve the schedule and reliability of the plans. So we looked at advancement and growth. So again, we're heading towards construction 4.0, and there's a lot of digitization in construction. The increase in digitization hasn't gone hand in hand with increased productivity. There's no evidence to show that yet, but it is something that's going to probably be more of a challenge. There is more opportunities, obviously, with a greater diverse supply chain. You're able to integrate more. So the difference, obviously, between digital and analog, to get people into a room, that's a logistical challenge. Getting all the right stakeholders, all the right leaders and owners who have involvement or in the project into a room it's not all that easy. You have dispersed teams, whether it's design teams, clients, supply chain. So using a digital planning system as well can integrate to teams. It can allow teams to work remotely and get involved together. So that's probably a new stage in advancement, and it's probably typically apt for this time with our labour restrictions now that we're more dispersed teams and relying more on technology to communicate. So again, you still have to try and focus is the people that do make the plans and are the people that are responsible for the plan. So it's to get that engagement and involvement. But using digital planning, so we looked at 180 tasks, I think, from the previous example. As this system progressed, we were getting over 350 tasks based on people filling out their weekly work plans and look ahead plans in a digital forum. So they were able to engage a lot more with their different teams and get more detailed plans. So the plans increased, and it took a lot more effort to manage these plans. So it's key as well that you can put a lot of information in these plans, but it's important that they're reviewed every week. So at the bottom of the page, you can see the different color lines, but essentially what you can see is complete and incomplete tasks. There's no ambiguity. The PPC was rigorously reviewed each week. So again, that's the ownership you want in your plans. You can put any amount of information into your weekly plans, but if it isn't relevant, it isn't captured. If we're not doing the PDCA, you're not really delivering a lean project model. You may look like you're doing it, but you need that accountability, and that's where the trust and ownership is required. People need to own their plans and be accountable for it. And again, if you're creating a learning environment, a no blame culture, you're creating an environment or an opportunity to improve your plans all the time. This is kind of an example then of the improvements we went from one building to a next. This is the structural steel. Using PPC, using the lean delivery model, there's a 12-week improvement, a 20% increase in the number of pieces as well. You can see there that the orange line is higher there. So it was less breakdowns of workflow, less blockers, and a more predictable state of how we delivered it. We can see this is the PPC data from that particular time, and this was taken from the start of 2018. As you can see, we had Storm Emma there at the 26th of February, which was the snowstorm that shut down the Dublin area anyway for a week. And then you can see that there was a slow progression back up to productivity. However, we were still getting pieces in, but we were seeing more interactions, and it was actually a more difficult time post Storm Emma, getting the site back in, getting suppliers back in. but it gave us the information to improve. But we did still achieve our goals of improving the project by 12 weeks despite the challenges. So that is one example how lean is an agile system. We didn't predict a week shutdown in our original forecast, but we were able to get the guys in, replan it, refocus, and use an agile PDCA learning environment to improve our plans. So this is what are the motivators and the satisfactors? So we talk about lean construction as people orientated. People are responsible for owning the plans. People are going to be the leaders of the supply chain design, of all the stakeholders. So Hertzberg, hygiene, and motivational factors. I know this is a bit loose, but I'll show you an example of how this kind of came into it. Working conditions are poor working conditions, poor company policies, poor salary or lack of status, job security. These are all dissatisfactors on person's working environment. But motivation, recognizing success, recognition of their efforts, showing the sense of achievement, putting realistic goals there that they can achieve, that we can celebrate. He said advancement, giving people an opportunity to advance and grow in their organizations, giving people responsibility and job challenges. So, what we were talking about there is the conditions of satisfaction, identifying success, celebrating success, show where we can grow, use more technologies, get people involved, and create this learning environment. So we're kind of motivating people to progress and get involved. And then there's job challenge. So, continuous improvement is one of the cores of lean delivery model, and that is going to challenge people, and particularly in a COVID-19 environment where we're probably challenge our teams to look at more off-site manufacturing, so we're changing the way we work. We're probably doing more meetings online. So we're changing the way we're challenging how we're working. But again, we're trying to get feedback and improve the systems and get back to the productivity that we had maybe prior to CV19. But these are motivators for people to work. So again, we covered some of this. So this is it's not a Mace innovation strategy. It's not too dissimilar to standard innovation. So we talked about digital technology, using system, process, and workflows to improve assembling products. So this is about DFSMA, design and off-site manufacturing and solutions. So we're talking about digital solutions, maybe off-site solutions. So we're talking about how to maybe assemble rather than construct on a construction site. And then we obviously have to think of the life cycle and performance and maintenance of a building. So that's this, but it's all underpinned by lean and continuous improvement. And again, I suppose this is kind of another slight case study of how this is challenging production, So we're using the lean culture that we had to do project improvements. So our original delivery is good. We provided exactly what the client wanted. However, we challenged our teams again, to improve our project improvement to get a better system. So this was done given a data hall example. So just to give people an example why a data hall works, the floor area is full of computers. They generate heat. There's a cooling system that needs to keep it cool. So basically most of the work is done at height, and the floor area is left for storing of servers and computers and whatnot. So we were building data halls. We noted that 25 to 30% of our labor were in MEWPs and spotters. 25% of observed time was motion waste. MEWPs moving up and down, gathering materials, and multiple trades working in close proximity. So if you even relay that back to our original site there, we had a huge amount of waste in this. We had skilled labor potentially working a spotter. We've obviously unnecessary movement going up and down. We've unnecessary material handling, and trade-to-trade handovers were difficult and maybe quality as well. More people interacting in the system. You can see on the bottom right hand corner, there's a lot of equipment there, a lot of access needed, a lot of segregation needed, and just a lot of project management needed, people working in close proximity. Again, this was a successful delivery. No issues in terms of safety, quality, or costs. What we're trying to show here is challenging production, a project improvement. So we came up with a modular solution. So this took all 70% of the work outside the data hall, and we were able to work in parallel. So we had a modular manufacturing facility in one section, and then we had people who could put in the services above ceiling working in the data hall unobstructed. We then, as you can see, have a clear environment where we can put in prefabricated modules and install them in the ceiling grid. And from a construction management point of view, it's a much stable, much more, reliable workplace. And we kind of developed a takt time in this as well. It took a certain amount of time to put all the ceiling services. That led to this. We managed our production of our modules to suit that. We were able to keep everything in time. So I showed you before examples of gathering the data. So we knew how long it took to put in all the services above the ceiling. We knew how long it was going to take to get the ceiling ready to accept the modules. We were able to break up the work into zones so we can move some of the works outside into modular. We were able to get the right sequence of trades in. We were able to balance the volume of material so we weren't over processing or making more modules that we needed. And that is the takt time, so the planning and control. We were able to keep everything in sync and work on each other. So this improvement made it a lot easier for us to manage works on site. So this, as you see here, this customer value, if you want to put it like that. We have safety benefits. We remove 75% of the working at height from the data halls. The construction assembly, material logistics, we reduced 35 daily deliveries down to 8 daily deliveries. We had clear access to our work areas. We had a 70% reduction of operative work in the data hall, as you can see, and the works were sequenced and managed. So your day-to-day construction management activities were more controlled, and this left fewer execution problems that we said at the part. So this is an example of how we did have a good delivery model, but again we challenged and it motivated the team to come up with unique solutions to provide a better improvement. I suppose, yeah, this is an improvement in 4D tracking. We're looking at real-time allocation of modules and how they were getting built to make sure that everything was in sync with each other. So we had visibility on one cloud system. And a summary of the performance, was the cost, increased productivity of labor force, increased quality and right first time installations, improved quality, improved delivery. So we can see that the safety element was huge as well, because there was not a lot of trades working each other. There wasn't a lot of deliveries to manage. We didn't have all the segregation issues before. So it was an easier delivery system to manage. The innovation was front-ended. We put a lot of work into developing the innovation, but when it comes to assembling on site, it was a lot more reliable and easier to manage. So I suppose we'll go back to our slide about what our expectations were for lean delivery. I hope I was able to show how a collaborative management, improves leadership and ownership, because all stakeholders are involved in this. And we can see how that improves safety. So challenging production and improving our delivery, we were able to show was the last example, a much safer, cleaner site through coordination. This reviewed the information gathered. We got our PPCs up to 70 to 80%. We've got our identification of tasks up by 300%. We got fewer execution problems, and that provided schedule and cost reliability, increased quality. And again, it's the guys that are delivering the project that take responsibility of this. And ultimately, that provides increased value for the customer. So that's the end of my presentation for today. So thank you very much for your attendance, and I will hand back to Susan.
Thanks, Kevin. That was a very insightful presentation. We are going to head straight into Q&A because we have a lot of questions. Hope you're ready.
Okay.
First question up. Do you think if contractors had more direct employees, they will be able to introduce lean methodology more and increase productivity rather than have all subcontractors?
Well, that is one of the traditional breakdowns, or one of the things that's highlighted as being a problem for implementing lean construction. The nature of construction is that there isn't a lot of direct employees. It isn't, I suppose it's reliability of supply. Can you maintain a large number of employees? I don't know whether the sector can do that. That's probably a bigger question. It will make it easier, but I suppose what the best way of putting that is for contractors to build up a reliable supply chain. That you have reliable people that do specific specialist trades that are working in partnership with you, that share the same values that you have, in quality, safety, cost, performance, so you do need to possibly have your specialist supply chain in place and build partnerships rather than having direct employees per se, which may not be sustainable, but certainly have a partner, a reliable supply chain that you can work with.
Okay, perfect. Next question. What members of the project team were involved in the PPC process?
Okay, well, the supply chain ultimately own their plans. So as a main contractor, Mace would expect the supply chain to provide their weekly work plans. So the weekly work plans will be made by them with their available resources. We will coordinate those weekly work plans, and it's up to the subcontractor teams to perform on those weekly work plans. So they own the plans. We provide the infrastructure, the environment for people to work. Everyone understands what they need to do to get to work, and they provide weekly work plans. So it's down at the supervisor level. He has to understand the plans, that he's the one carrying out the work, and they work in teams together and travel back up through Mace, I suppose, to review weekly work plans, get the feedback, and get the improvements that are required out back down to the supply chain, the supervisors on site. So it's the supervisors on site really that own the plans.
Okay. Next question. What approach was taken to park the commercial issues that enabled the team focus and engage with PPC?
The commercial issue, was mandated to a certain degree that you had to provide a weekly work plan and a look ahead as part of your requirement to work. So what we did is, there is a guarding, a lack of trust that has to be built up within the teams, so what teams did find is when they started using the PPC, and some teams picked it up quicker than others, that they were actually making more money. They were getting more resource utilization. They weren't standing around. They were able to organize their teams, and that sort of cascaded through the other teams. So they say, well, okay, these guys are working well. Let's us get more involved. So as people got more involved, they actually got more benefit out of themselves. They were able to manage their materials and their resources more efficiently. So in fact, from a commercial point of view, they made more money, so it made more sense for them to get involved in it.
Okay. An attendee's asking, what technology are you using for digital planning?
Yeah, okay. So we're currently using a software called VisiLean.com. So VisiLean is a cloud platform for managing weekly work plans and look ahead plans. I know there is various softwares out there, but that's the one we're currently using.
Okay. Perfect. Another attendee is asking, is PPC and or LPS used by Mace on all its projects?
It is, yes. Again, it's about the process is there, but it's about people and the maturity of people working on them as well. So, we saw the PPC that started in our project. It took time to get through. So PPC is used on all Mace projects, but as you say, everybody has to get involved in it and improves PPC. So it's the standard across all Mace projects is to use the last planner system.
Okay, so that answer then will lead into the next question I have here. What was the biggest challenge getting people on the journey, i.e. willingness to try a different approach?
Yeah, okay. I suppose when we got everybody together at the start of the project, we got everybody in the room, and everybody was able to earn the concerns, the risks, what their misgivings were, including, the client could say what directions he was able or could not do. So designers were able to show the risk that they had currently at that stage, early stages in the project. And the supply chain were also able to show the risks. So we were able to workshop that. We were able to look at our risks, go back, agree what we intend or how we would like the project to proceed, and then we reconvened again. And we got a greater understanding of everybody's perspective and the risk of opportunities from each sector of the delivery program, from the client, design team, main contractor, supply chain, and supplier. So, that laid the foundation for producing that lean journey. It's actually shown what people were comfortable with, what they weren't comfortable with, and then as a collective, how do we improve or knock down the misgivings? And it's baby steps, to build up this. You don't go headlong into it. You need to understand each other, make sure everyone's perception is correct, and don't take it for granted. So that's how you sort of build and start the lean journey. Is you get your risks and opportunities, and you share them collectively, and you build up a model of how you would like to see the project progress.
Okay, excellent. Another attendee is asking, what was the overall improvement delivered between first and latest data center?
The overall improvement, sure, that was an example of 112 weeks. So again, if you look at the value that was required, if you like, so we were able to produce these much more efficiently. The quality was hugely improved. So we were able to, there was multiple levels of improvements. I can't say specifically, but that example of 12 weeks for one area would be indicative of all the different sections of the job.
Okay.
There was a greater focus on maybe commissioning or sustainability as well. So we were able to change our values through it, because we had that comfortable or predictability in how we delivered. So there was huge improvements, but again, it was focused on what the customer wanted, what they really wanted, and where they saw value.
Okay, leads into another question. Were you able to measure improvement in quality? Do you have data to measure this?
Yes, quality is huge. So each of these phases were handed over with full paperwork and defect free. So quality would be the main focuses of the client. So if we understood, or the early days, we understood that quality was of paramount importance. So we understood then that we needed it. Quality was going to be the most important part of our delivery method. So we have all the quality metrics, quality data from tech sub development, method statements, samples, mock-ups, observations, and all checklists. This is all digitally managed, and that would be all shown in that digital control room. So this was throughout the life cycle. Quality would have been focused on. It's not just at the end when we're starting to get our manuals together. It was a key integral part of the journey. So as we said, we handed over the buildings with their full paperwork and defect free. So it was one of the highest priorities on the project.
Okay, great. Which tool for lean leadership is used during pre-construction early phase of the project in managing design inquiries and criteria?
It is a last planner system. It's still the same. You need to identify. This is where the accountability goes in, like to get rigorous or a roadmap of pre-construction. There's X amount of gateways you're going to go through, so there's requirements at various stages of gateways that things need to get done. So it's to identify those gateways, what the prerequisites are, who the owners are, what the make-ready needs are. It's the same principle on checking in weekly that it's a collective system. You're planning to do X amount of work. Did you do it? If you did, yes. If you didn't, what did you need to do? Who needs to give you input? So would be based on the last planner system, the PDCA model.
Okay. Is there an optimum time to get your trade partners on board? Let's say, for example, 50% through preliminary design.
The earlier the better, yes. Early contractor engagement is probably one of the keys for the success. The earlier, depending obviously on the design build or if you're hand design, but the earlier you can get your suppliers and contractors engaged with the client is really important. So I would say the earliest you can get them in, the better. Early contract engagement is key for understanding what the issues will, the risks and opportunities. You know, there's potential opportunities as well as mitigating risk by getting early contractor engagement involved.
Okay, this is a long question now, Kevin. How would you handle a situation where the client's team wanted to use a tool similar to BIM 360 to manage the task, but they were not interested in keeping a PPC trend? They were not ready to commit with specific timeframes, but were willing to have a closer coordination on the tasks each team is working on.
Okay, well, if there's increased coordination and collaboration, that's a good thing. That can only lead well. But one of the basic things, even from what I was presenting here, is trying to show that ownership and accountability is key to improving projects. So if you're not held accountable or holding teams or the whole project stakeholders accountable, it's difficult to produce that learning environment. And part of the lean continuous improvement philosophy is getting a learning environment. So if you have no information to learn from, you're not really going to have a lean delivery model.
Okay. Another attendee is asking, did you apply PPC for contractor design delivery?
Yes, we are. We would do that in terms of BIM collaborations, technical drawings, tech submittals, all that kind of work would be measured. So the teams will be accountable for that, and we use that information to improve our delivery. So we have predictability of the information that's coming into us and making sure that doesn't impact on the production side.
Okay. Another attendee is wanting to know, did Mace train everyone, or were trade partners required to train their own staff on lean?
Yeah, okay. We generally don't have training per se, but we spent a lot of time developing a system, and you know, we give contractors an environment to work in. So the basics are, you know, getting weekly work plans and owning their work. So, you know, they're specialist contractors. They understand their works better than anything. But I think it's just to give that environment or the parameters to work in. And then we you know, weekly, it's always a learning day here. So it's, as we say, it's a learning environment that you're trying to create. So without necessarily understanding the fundamentals of lean, we're able to impact and get contractors to work in a lean environment. So there isn't huge training, I would say. You know, we do have key staff that are trained. There's always continuous improvements there, but to the supply chain, a lot of them take out their own training, you know, because they see the benefits in it and want to get involved in it. But from our perspective, we put the parameters in place to create a lean environment and try and create a culture that there's no blame culture learning environment. So these are all lean philosophies and, you know, promoting continuous improvement. So that's how we foster the lean culture on site.
Okay. Where did the digital board reside, and who was responsible for updating this?
The digital board resides in our office in Mace. So it's a The digital command room was in the main project office. The, the, the information is collated from the supply chain through package managers. So there's, you'll have commercial leads, safety leads, quality leads, all these leads, construction and productivity leads will all have the central source of information that will be distributed on all the boards. So it's a single source of information, but it was from the supply chain back up to the main contractor and any client interface as well. So it's for all stakeholders. So as we say, it's a single source of truth, but it's packaged for every element of the job.
Okay. What is your view of common data environment, especially common terms and definitions and locally researched unit, price, task, bulk? Critical, useful, neither?
I've only really started looking at that. It's again, I suppose we're heading towards construction 4.0 as we call it, and data is going to be a key. I suppose gathering of data and gathering the right data is going to be key. It's probably a new learning function. We can measure everything now at this stage, but are we measuring the right things? And we have been more digitized recently in construction, but productivity hasn't really shown that improvement, even with the greater take up of digital tools. So I'm not best placed to answer that question, but I do think how we manage data and how is going to be something that we need to look at very closely going forward.
Okay, excellent. Was there any conflicting situations in tech group meetings? And if so, how were they dealt with?
I suppose if you, I can't relate to that scenario, but if you're talking about dealing with conflict, the idea here is about showing transparency in what our plans are, our look ahead plans, and what what we intend to do over the next number of months, and who's the key stakeholder. So there may be issues, to put an example, in construction that there's two areas where people wanted to work, but one team had more criticality over the other. We were able to explain that prior to it becoming a conflict. We were saying, okay, this is the method that we're going. These are the guys that are going to take priority. You're needed somewhere else. So it's the common values and the roadmap, so people could understand where these decisions were made. So this transparency of how we deliver improves the delivery model. It's a less confrontational method.
Okay, perfect. A couple more questions. Where do you begin to create a lean integrated project?
Okay, sure. It's getting the people in the room. We all started off together. So, the main stakeholders are there. The client obviously has a vision of what he needs and a scope for what he needs, which he shares with his design teams, and they develop it and cost it. The early engagement of the main contractor to show the constructability of it, building trusted supply chain partners to get involved in showing innovative solutions. It's about getting people into the room, the right people into the room, building a team, and that's essentially you're building a lean delivery roadmap there already. You're looking at the conditions of satisfaction, what are the values for the customer, which we said, and then you look at focus on the opportunities to improve the value and eliminate wastes.
Okay, one final question. Does this approach only work for large projects?
No, not at all. It can work on every project. What you're trying to get is a predictable and accountable supply chain. So if you have people on small jobs, even housing projects, but if you can ensure that if an electrician is required in 3 weeks' time, that the prerequisite work is done, that when the electrician is there, he does his work, he goes, and he is ensuring that he has all the equipment he needs, he can tell you then he'll be finished, the next trade can go. So it's about getting ownership and transparency with these plans, and they don't need to be big plans at all. But it's about getting people into the room and showing the accountability, you know, reviewing plans, reviewing look aheads, making sure the make ready needs are there, that the trades have all they need and all the information they need, the materials and resources they need to do their jobs, and they're accountable to do their jobs and hand it off to the next guy. So it's useful all the way through, from small to big projects.
Okay, that's great. Kevin, thanks a million for answering all those questions. I'd like to thank Kevin again for his presentation. A copy of this webinar will be sent out to everyone who attended. We will send out the information shortly via LinkedIn, Twitter and newsletter for the next webinar, which will take place on the 17th of June. The topic of June's webinar is 5 S's in Construction, and it will be presented by Maria Ryan from Crystalline Solutions. Once again, thank you from Kevin and myself on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. You can follow Lean Construction Ireland on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook and through the website leanconstructionireland.ie. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you.